Right, well, welcome everybody to this Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee meeting on Thursday the 26th of June. We will do introductions, they'll be done later, but before the item begins we'll do housekeeping.
So I've moved the microphone.
Okay. So, the fire alarm. A fire practice is not expected. If the alarm sounds, can all present leave the building as quickly as possible by way of the nearest exit. The designated assembly point is in the public square in front of Cast, beyond the fountain, away from the civic office. If there is anybody with mobility issues, please wait in the refuge area at the top of the stairs where the emergency evacuation lift is located and use the intercom situated to the left-hand side of the lift doors to call for assistance. No roll call will be taken. Thank you. Mobile phones, I would like to ask everyone in to ensure that your mobile phone and all other devices are switched to silent mode, please. Filming of the meeting. This meeting will be audio, visually recorded and will be available to view on the Council's website and YouTube channel. Can I ask all those present to use their microphones to ensure that audio can be captured? Any members of the public entering the Council chamber are accepting that their images will be retained and broadcast by the Council. If there is any public in attendance, if any member of the public or press is intending to record or film any part of today's meeting, please ensure that this does not disturb the conduct of the meeting. Okay, so the agenda. Can I ask the officers to introduce themselves, please?
Thank you, Chair. Daniel Swain, Executive Director, Police.
Morning, Lee Tillman, Exec Director, Policy Partnerships and Investment.
Phil Holmes, Executive Director of Adults, Wellbeing and Culture.
Faith Tyers, Service Director for Finance and Technology. Good morning.
Good morning, I'm Rachel Leslie, Director of Public Health.
Good morning. Good morning, Lee Galt, Service Director in Children's for Partnerships and Localities.
Good morning, I'm Rebecca Wall, I'm the Service Director for Children's Social Care.
Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Rebecca Booth, Gemma Cobby, and we also have apologies from Rhianna Nelson, the Executive Director for Children and Young People, and Debbie Hogg, the Executive Director of Corporate Resources. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So item 2, to consider the extent, if any, to which the public and press are to be excluded from the meeting. There are no issues on the agenda. Item 3, declarations of interest, if any.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just declare an interest in the Future Prosperity Fund because the organisation I work for is making a bid for it. Thank you.
Thank you. So item 4, minutes from the meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee held on the 27th of March, 10th of February and the 29th of July, pages 1 to 32, are to be agreed? Yeah. And are these seconded?
Yeah, I'll second them. Thank you.
Okay, so item 5, public statements. A period not exceeding 20 minutes for statements from up to 5 members of the public on matters within the panel's remit, proposing actions which may be considered or contribute towards the future development of the panel's work programme. Are there any members of the public in attendance? Mr. Wright would like to make a statement.
Okay. If you can stand there, please.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Doug Wright. I'm part of Health and Social Care Party. There's two things. The first thing, this item itself, I welcome that fresh people are here to look at this item, not in isolation, but as part of what other committee have. You put this on, this will be put on the agenda since ad infinitum at this stage in time. And what I'd like, Chair, you and the committee to consider to put this item later on in the agenda, to consider it in future and to think about it, because the people, the councillors here are going to talk about things which are relevant to everybody, including hopefully more people that come and listen to speaking, and they going to make statements or going to say things, and people like us two and the committee coming here to the committee want to say in response, or at least find out what you're saying after you've said it. And so perhaps you could look at the general point. Rather than have this early on in the agenda, you could have it later. It doesn't have to be, I understand it's not part of the council's rules and regulations. It's your choice. You can do it with it early in the agenda or late in the agenda. That's the first point. Sorry? Carry on. Okay. Secondly, and this is more complex. I don't understand it either. It's to do with the South Yorkshire, Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire Joint Health and Scrutiny Committee. Now, this is not, again, it is not something new, but I've forgotten it exists because there's no information about it apart from what you've all received today. And basically, I want people to look at it. I mean, what can it tell you, never mind the members of the public, what's going on? It really doesn't tell you anything at all. It just talks about the usual, sort of basic things. But what is going on in South Yorkshire, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, and the other things? Perhaps somebody could look at it, and in the first instance, perhaps, Chair, somebody can explain to me and probably to other members, new members of this committee, what does it all mean? What is it supposed to do? And even a quite simple point: when are the meetings? I don't know when the meetings are. Do you? And I'll leave it at that because I doubt if many people know here, and that's quite genuine. And I'd like people to find out. Perhaps send me a line. My name, they've got the address locally. And then also more important for you to understand what is going on. And I'll leave it to that, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wright, for your statement. I'm just going to hand over to Christine.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Just to confirm that the terms of reference are from the Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee for South Yorkshire. And Mr. Wright, they set the meeting separately through Sheffield City Council, and they're advertised on the website when the meetings are arranged. Okay, thank you.
I'm so sorry, we're just going to have to move on at this point. Can I go to item 5, which is, item 6, sorry. It's the City of Doncaster Council, the 2024-25 Quarter 4 Finance and Performance Improvement Report, pages 33 to 104.
Excuse me, Chair. I've allowed 20 minutes.
Mr. Wright, it is at my discretion, though.
I'll sit down then.
Thank you. So, this is the committee's opportunity to comment on the information provided, and I'll hand over to Lee Tillman and Faye Tyers for a short introduction.
Well, thank you, Chair. Morning. So I'm just going to say a little bit about the performance, just a quick overview of what's in the report. So overall, our performance remains pretty good, reflecting our continued focus on improving services and delivering those high-quality services that our residents trust and need and expect. The challenge is always for the work that we do is very the context is very challenging. We've obviously seen quite a lot of instability globally, and obviously that impacts on us through from oil prices, through cost of living pressures, etc., as well as a kind of less confidence in the UK national economy. But all that said, we've continued to deliver good, high quality services in what is a very challenging context. Just to give I suppose a brief overview of some of the successes as well as some of the challenges. 555 homes have been energy retrofitted throughout the year, particularly focusing on our most vulnerable tenants and residents. We've seen persistent absence in secondary schools that's dropped compared with the same point last year. We've seen a significant increase in our recruitment of both qualified social workers and residential social work roles, and we're within our target for the number of people who've been supported to move into residential care. We've also built 385 affordable homes over the 24-25 period. However, there's always challenges and there's always things that we can do better and things that we need to focus on. And just to give an illustration of some of those challenges, we've seen increases in the number of people being educated at home, and I know there's some questions on that from the panel. We've seen our spend with local companies average 64% against a target of 70%, and the number of people receiving a carers assessment has reduced over the last quarter. So there are obviously challenges, and there will always be challenges, but overall I think our performance is good, and particularly when you compare to other places and other councils, we continue to maintain a really good focus on performance in a very challenging time. I think Faye's going to do the finance bit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lee. So I'll just do a quick update in terms of the finances. So as the report outlines, it is a balanced position for 24-25. There was an overspend of 1.1 million, which was consistent with what we reported at Q3, and that has been funded using the earmarked reserves identified and detailed in the report. Within this position, there are several significant overspends, which have been consistently reported throughout the year, and they've been offset by contingency funding. So when we set the budget, we highlighted the risks in terms of where we expected pressures to materialise and set some contingency funding aside in advance. And that has been utilised to fund the pressures that are detailed, which includes adult social care, 7.6 million overspend, mainly due to the number of older people in residential care and increased provision for supported living clients. The other pressure we face, which is, these are consistent with other councils, many other councils, is homelessness, and that was 1.1 million overspend, mainly due to additional housing benefit costs that are not covered by the subsidy due to temporary accommodation. These were fully considered when we set the 25-26 budget and continue to be closely managed, so we will be reporting on these further as we progress in 25-26. Capital, overall spend is just short of 120 million on 502 schemes. Overall, the programme slipped to future years, so it slipped from the 209 million, which will mainly progress to future years, and details are included in the report. The other area to highlight is the Dedicated Schools Grant, which was an overspend of just over 12 million in 24-25, making an overall Dedicated Schools Grant deficit of just over 37 million. This remains a national challenge, and although the position improved compared to Q3, this remains a significant risk. It has been recently communicated that the statutory override, which was due to finish in March 26, has been extended to March 28. So what that basically means is when the override expires, that deficit can no longer be carried forward, but there's been an extra 2 years to carry forward that deficit, and we'll await the outcome of the spend reforms and in terms of future funding as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to questions now, but could I ask that you could make your responses as concise as possible, please? The first question, I think, is it Councillor John Reid, you have your question?
Yeah, morning, Lee. Paragraph 12 in the service standards, reduction in the CO2 emissions is showing red. So that obviously means it's not going down. Can you outline why and the current position, please?
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Yeah, so I suppose just a bit of context about this indicator. We set a target of a 10% annual reduction each year, and in 23-24 we did achieve that target, but as the report says, and as you've highlighted, 24-25 we didn't. We achieved a very small reduction of less than 0.5%. So there's a number of reasons for that. I'll just explain what they are, but then also I'll explain what we're doing to try and improve that position as we move forward. So there's a number of ins and outs, really, a number of contributing factors to this. So our gas consumption as an authority is increased by 5%, our water consumption is increased by 8%, and the number of business miles that our staff are using to do their work, to go about their business, has also increased by 20,000 miles. There's also been a reduction, however, in the amount of electricity that we use. So there's a number of factors that contribute both positively and negatively. So in terms of the things that we are doing and where we expect to see improvement in the future, our EV, electric vehicle transport fleet, we continue to invest in that, and we've got 70 new vehicles arriving in the next financial year, We've also got some more in this current financial year, which will expect us to see a 10 to 15% reduction in our emissions from vehicles. We've also going to do some work around our buildings and the energy efficiency of our buildings. So we're recruiting at the moment through external funding a heat and energy manager, which will help to drive down electricity consumption and look at all the ways that we can use to do that. And we'll also be looking at on-site energy generation that's renewable as well to reduce the amount of energy consumption that we have. We're also going to be doing some more work with our staff, understanding their patterns of coming into work, how they do that, how they travel, and if we can look at more efficient ways of doing that reduce emissions. And we're also examining, and this is off the back of some of the staff survey work that we did earlier in the year, whether we could introduce a salary sacrifice offer. A lot of councils do that to invest in electric vehicles as well. So it doesn't cost us anything. Actually, we benefit as a council, but staff get access to salary sacrifice benefits. So there's a number of things that we're doing there to reduce emissions. The trajectory is positive, but in this year, 24-25, as the report says, we did see that slight reduction, not the reduction that we'd hoped for. Thank you.
I was going to ask the name of the new manager, but you said it's under recruitment still. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, I think that's is it for Antoinette?
Morning. Right, so my question is in regard to elective home education. It's proposed for consideration possibly in December on the CYP board, but looking at it, the number is high and it's increasing. Can anybody just provide a brief explanation of why that is?
I'm happy to support. Thank you. In terms of elective home education, Doncaster has a really robust register in relation to elective home education. It's not a statutory requirement, but just to offer you some context, we do obviously cross-reference with other areas that also look at the percentage of children in elective home education. And what we see is that our autumn elective home education rate was 1.9, which is comparable to Barnsley's 2%, North Lincolnshire at 1.9 and Calderdale at 2%. It is above the Yorkshire and Humber, which is 1.1, but actually Kingston upon Hull haven't declared their number, so that pulls the regional down. So it's really important to set it against a regional and national picture in relation to elective home education. We obviously are ambitious. We want to see that elective home education group of children get safe, ambitious education provided by in a positive environment. What we do know is that a number of parents, when they are asked why they electively home educate, will tick the other box. So 49% tick the other. They don't want to necessarily give us the official reason. From our analysis, what we would say is around 12% of that philosophical. We actively want to remove our child from school. We think we can do better. We don't agree with the education curriculum. We then have 4.1% of our elective home education cohort do have EHCP plans. I know that's often a consideration around, is it because we don't have the right resource and placement for young people, and that's why parents choose. We also have had no parents reporting to us that they feel that they're encouraged to electively home educate by schools, but we also know that we do have a complex small cohort of young people where sometimes parents choose when they're pursued by the attendance pathway, for example. So there is a lot of work for us to do to understand the nature of the young people that are being electively home educated. What I would say is it's a very dynamic number as well, in terms of what we often find is where parents do feel dissatisfied or they're concerned about their child's mental health, which is often another reason that we could say, but sometimes parents don't feel comfortable expressing. We work ambitiously to get that child back into an education setting. So a number of those children are actually actively home educated for around a year, but we work to get them back in the right setting with the right support. We do, if there are safeguarding issues, make sure that those are flagged and that we have active consideration and discussion and use the right processes if we're concerned that that child is being removed so that they don't have eyes on and sight in school. So there are a number of reasons that we try to track using our professional knowledge, connecting with others, and it is a really complex arena at the moment with the Children Wellbeing Act, obviously lots of national interest and awareness around elective home education, which sometimes means that parents want to exercise that choice. But hopefully that gives you some assurance that we kind of know some of those drivers and that we want to work actively with parents to get the right offer for their children.
Thank you. And I don't know whether you've answered this, but later on in the report it talks about a cultural element, and it wasn't really clear what the cultural element was.
What we know is that some of our, particularly Gypsy, Roma and Traveller community, will withdraw their children when we get into the age of school where it's sex education and religious education. So we do see in years 5 and 6, sometimes young girls being pulled out of school, not all, but some. So there is just some sense of understanding that the cultural curriculum that schools sometimes put forward doesn't always resonate well with parents, and they will make that active choice at that point.
And I think there was talk of a multi-agency group which would be formed to look at aspects of home education. Is there anything further you can add to that, please?
I think we really want to make sure that we're looking as a system about what the levers and enablers are around elective home education, good elective home education, but also trying to make sure that that's a proactive choice, not a reactive choice for family. And actually sometimes that means working as a multi-agency partnership to make sure that we're offering the right support to parents and children to remain in school if that's what they want to do, and or to be safe if they're not within that school setting. So it's really about making sure the system is really engaged at a strategic level to make sure that we're maximising that support to families so that they can make a proactive choice.
Will that group be looking at persistent absence? Because obviously if children are going into home education, there will be a reduction in persistent absence, which you mentioned at the start of the meeting. So it's not really a win if persistent absence is reducing because children are moving into home education.
Absolutely, and again, I think as a system we've worked really closely with schools to create real accountability in terms of what their absence looks like, what their suspensions and exclusions look like. We use the data to help us inform, check, challenge and work to ensure that we are enabling children to be in school, not to reduce absence, but to actually make sure that we work as a system, which is where the multi-agency comes in really importantly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, that's me. Can I ask, where is the accountability for send failures that have pushed families out of the system?
Okay, I'll take this one, Chair, for me. So I'll just start off by giving a little bit of context around the legislation and guidance. So the second code of practice is that statutory guidance. It outlines what local authorities, schools and other organisations have to do to support children and young people with disabilities. It's a comprehensive guidance and a legal framework that we all have to adhere to. In terms of accountability, it's important to note that schools are accountable to Ofsted, and schools are a big player in this space, obviously, in terms of supporting children and young people. The system accountability lies with the local authority, and we are very passionate and committed as a local authority and as a system to provide the best support we can for young people. But it is worth noting that we do this against a huge national pressures. We've seen significant increases in demand, and we see that in Doncaster we've had an increase of 123% of requests for education healthcare plans. So in the last 18 months that equates to over 1,400 more. That puts a lot of pressure on the system, not only in Doncaster but also nationally. We've seen the increased complexities, so the level of needs for young people that we're supporting has gone up significantly over the last 5 years. And also we've got some significant financial constraints. So as Faye touched on around the pressures to DSG, that figure is 5 billion nationally. We have a plan. We've got a really clear plan. We've refreshed that plan. We've got really clear, tight governance arrangements around that. We have a SEND board. Our Director of Children's Services, who has the statutory responsibility for children, chairs that. We are confident in the plan. We are committed and passionate to doing everything we can. It's not easy. We acknowledge that. Our vision, not only for children with additional needs, but for all children, is to keep them all at home and in Doncaster. I'm conscious also that we are going to be bringing this back to the Children's Scrutiny later in the years, so it might be that we then bring back that detailed update against the plan.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to add, Antoinette?
Just to ask a little bit about the delays, referring to late advice delays and just what that means, and is there a particular agency that we struggle with in terms of late advice?
Yeah. So what late advice delays means, in the context of education healthcare plans, it typically refers to situations where professionals, and that could be across the system, do not provide their statutory advice for the plan in time. So ideally that should be provided within 6 weeks. So consultant psychologist, education psychologist, ideally needs to provide that statutory advice to the local authority within 6 weeks. Sometimes that's delayed simply because of the reasons I've mentioned about complexity and demand and the implications that has on resources. Where that happens at times, that then delays our SEND officers completing the education healthcare plan within the statutory 20 weeks. And you'll have seen that in the reduction of performance in Q4, where only 38 of 75 have done that. We know that. We're acknowledging that again. This is a Doncaster and a national problem. But we've got things in place that we're very much committed to doing. We've strengthened how we escalate that with partners through a weekly meeting so we can identify where we think there might be a potential slip, and we're identifying that quicker and more robustly, and we've got mechanisms in place for that. We're also looking at increasing our capacity across the partnership and also within our SEND officers. So we've got more boots on the ground to process this.
Thank you. We've got a question for Councillor Jane Kidd.
Thank you. Can I ask, the Shared Prosperity Fund, how much work is actually being done with employers to get people back into work?
Hi, Jen. I'll start. You may chip in. But the short answer is there's lots. There's lots happening. And it's a big ticket item for us, you're aware of this. So I'll give you some examples of the things that are happening, if I may. So employment managers maintain strong relationships with local businesses, so that's a really good starting point and a foundation to build from. That includes organisations such as Polypipe, Amazon, Yorkshire Wildlife Park, which I'll come back to in the next example, but also the Yorkshire Ambulance Service, and they're really kind of engaging with them. We have additional staff, so there's a new senior employment manager and an employment manager that have been recruited to help drive this forward. And we're seeing some green shoots of that with DCLT, but also Yorkshire Wildlife Park, who are working with us to try and identify those potential residents that can move into employment quicker and earlier, and very much focusing on where we can see what we're calling almost like mass recruitment employers, where there are opportunities for organisations such as DCLT or the Yorkshire Wildlife Park to offer multiple employment opportunities. There's lots more to follow, but it's very much starting to build momentum, is what I would say.
Is this based around supporting people into work? Is it supporting employers to make reasonable adjustments?
Yes, yeah, and also trying to identify those residents that would really benefit from the opportunity of getting into employment that might not necessarily have those opportunities.
What about small and medium-sized enterprises?
Yeah.
So I think what we're increasingly seeing is that we need to provide support at both ends. So support for residents, but also support for businesses, small and large. And obviously we know most of our economy is made up of small businesses. I think 90% employ less than 10 people. We have 50 businesses that employ more than 250 out of 9,000. So the focus has got to be on the small business end. So what we're doing is a lot of work to try and understand what would help businesses, small businesses and charities and third sector organisations. And a lot of that is not expecting that business to do it on its own because it doesn't have the capacity, it doesn't have the HR teams, don't have the infrastructure that large businesses have. So what we're trying to do is how do we pull that support together to make it easy to access, for example, health and wellbeing support, how to access support to make those reasonable adjustments. And there's a real partnership with the health system as well to try and understand what those barriers for people to access and stay in work are, both from a resident's point of view and also from an employer's point of view. So we're trying to, in the past, I think we've had very much a one-size-fits-all approach. But what we're trying to do is make sure it's a bit more tailored to what those small businesses need and involving those small businesses as well in the design of it and what's working, because often if we just apply what we think works, that's not what the reality of small businesses is. And I think the final thing I would say that we're trying to do through all this work is to try and make sure that the system works more efficiently, because at the moment we've got lots and lots of different programs that are all operating, and a lot of them are commissioned by national government or regional government. And what we're trying to do is make sure the resources, the finite resources that we've got, are better used locally, and we join those up much more based on the needs of our businesses and residents.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one quick question from Antoinette, if that's okay.
And it might be a question for the future, but you talked about the override being extended for 2 years, otherwise the 37 million would have to have been stumped up now. It's just something to think about, maybe report back on. 2 years isn't a long time to mitigate 37 million, so I kind of think we need to know that things are in place over the next 24 months to make sure that should that override be finished, that's it, we know what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Antoinette. I'm expecting lots more details coming out as part of the consultation, and this will be a key topic as part of the 26-27 budget setting process, so we will be discussing this quite a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we're going to move on to making Doncaster the best place to do business and create good jobs. I think we have a question from Councillor Frank Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to paragraph 33, there were 37 new jobs over 31,000, it states, and under achievement against the target. Could you expand further?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you for the question. So I suppose the first thing to say is the way that the team, Business Doncaster team work, they don't physically create the jobs, but they work with businesses who want to create jobs and who are looking to create jobs and work with them to support them to do that. So the work that we do is often affected by the economic climate and the business appetite to grow and invest in new jobs. And I think what we've seen more generally is businesses either delaying their recruitment plans because of a lack of confidence in the economy, or scaling back those recruitment plans to do less. So the demands from the team in terms of where the support's focused is less on creating jobs and more on safeguarding jobs. So whilst we've seen less support provided for those new jobs over £31,000, which is obviously what we want to see. We want to see more jobs and better quality jobs. The target, so that's been the target for that has been underachieved in 24-25, as the report says, but we've overachieved by 100% on the number of jobs safeguarded. So the emphasis of the resources in the team has been supporting businesses to keep people in work. We still supported, I think, a total of nearly 195 under 31,000 and over 31,000 pound jobs, new jobs, but the emphasis has been on safeguarding jobs as well. So we go where the demand is and what the needs in the economy are, and the team are very flexible to try and understand what businesses need and then how can they best help.
Thank you. Just a secondary question. Do we know what kind of jobs these are? Are they, what particular sectors are they in? Are they in the retail or whatever?
So they'll be mixed. There's a mixture. I can get the breakdown if that's helpful, just so the spread. We obviously have officers in the team who support particular sectors. So we have manufacturing, we have creative and digital, we have retail. So we have low carbon economy as well. So we have different specialisms, and the team work with all investors and all businesses. So there'll be a mix. The reason why we put the emphasis on the 31,000 is because that's really what we want to see. Is want to see those better quality jobs. So we do put that emphasis on those, but we do support creation of jobs below that level as well. But I can get you the breakdown, Councillor. That's fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So now we're going to look at building opportunities for healthier, happier and longer lives for all. I think our first question is with Councillor Dave Knight.
Thank you, Chair. I can refer to paragraph 36. I'd just like to ask in this particular item here, the service standards for the sexual health service. Now, the percentage of contraception that the LARC, namely the long-acting reversible contraceptives, could you please expand further on this figure that we've shown here today of 28%?
Sure, so that's mine, and I know that this is the first time that some of you will have seen this indicator, so I'll give a bit of background to sexual health services as well. So sexual health services are one of the services that we must commission on behalf of our population, and sexual and contraceptive services are provided by Solutions for Health. People in Doncaster can also access contraception through their GP practice as well. The indicator that we report on around LARC, so long-acting reversible contraception, we recognise that LARC, so that's intrauterine devices, it's contraception injections and also the implants that you can have in your arm. They are more effective, they give good benefits in terms of they're reliable, that you don't have to remember to take them every day like some of the other methods, and they last for a long time, so in some cases up to 10 years. So if you're in a position in your life where you're not planning a pregnancy, then a long-acting reversible contraception can prevent unwanted pregnancies and is more successful or more effective than other forms. Just to report, the 100% of contraception would include pills as well, so contraception pills, patches, and also condoms, so that barrier method, which incidentally is the only method that also protects against sexually transmitted infections. So why has that number changed? We monitor it because we like to look at both the uptake, we like to promote long-acting reversible contraception, but the service as well, we also commission them as well as to provide the service on there up by the Premier Inn on East Lathgate. That's where you can access the service. They also provide hubs out in different areas of Doncaster as well. They also train staff members in the GP practice. So we use that as an indicator to ensure that the availability of LARC is sufficient for the population. Why has the numbers changed? So why are we seeing lower uptake? We've just started a survey process to understand contraception aspirations for our Doncaster population. There has been a change in mood or acceptability around long-acting reversible contraception, and there's various different reasons for that. I'll just go through a few. So for some, there's concern around side effects of using a hormone. So that's meant that some women have chosen different methods. That could include, in some cases, unprotected sex, but also the use of barrier methods or using fertility apps, which are much less effective than using a contraception method itself. There's been lots of social media around different ways that you can monitor your cycle, and that has proved more popular with some nationally as well, and we started to see that locally. If you think about the LARC that I've described as well, some women could find that quite invasive. So having an implant placed in your arm is a small intervention, or having an intrauterine device as well. Again, that could feel quite invasive for some women and may lead them to choose not to have that. Again, I've talked about the natural methods. We also do see variation as well in preference around contraception. We'll continue to promote long-acting reversible contraception. We've had some women's health hubs that have gone around and gone around with the health fan more recently to try and talk to women about what their contraception aspirations are and to give assurance around LARC. And we'll build into our service as well different opportunities for women to access LARC. So at the moment, we need to understand how that national change in mood and acceptability is affected locally, and that's why we're seeing a reduction.
Thank you. In addition, if I'm just something you seem to have maybe not referred to just now was the fact that can you expand or help me understand a little bit more why there seems to be quite some often case scenarios whereby from the time that somebody may get referred from the GP to actually getting the correct type of contraception they seek, there seems to be a gap there that's not been covered.
Okay, so the sexual health service is direct access, so anybody can access it directly. You don't have to have a referral from a GP, so you can either call or email. You can also use their buzzer as well on the high street. But and just talking about sexual health services overall as well, so contraception being one part of it, STI treatment, but also psychosexual support services. So that's the whole grouping of services that Solutions for Health provide. There will be times when a lady goes to her GP practice to ask for contraception advice, and that practice itself doesn't offer that type of contraception, in which case they will be referred or supported to access the service that's there. The service itself operates 4 days a week, so Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Friday. The other day they're out training or doing their hubs as well. So there shouldn't be too much of a delay in people accessing the contraception choice that they need to.
Thank you for your explanations there. Thank you, appreciated.
I think Councillor Steve Cox might have a question.
Yeah, thank you. And it is the same paragraph regarding Health on the High Street and the approval that was granted to consider for Waterdale. Where are we with it? With the place itself to carry out?
For sexual health services or for overall health on the high street? Lee, are you able to help? Yeah.
progress is being made. Obviously, it's commercially sensitive because it relates to a lease arrangement. And we anticipate that we'll be able to get that sorted reasonably quickly, but it is dependent on dialogue, obviously, being confirmed and suitable arrangements being agreed with all the relevant parties, including the NHS, the council and the current owner. So I anticipate that we'll be able to get those sorted and provide an update probably within the next month or so.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from me. It's paragraph 45, the 2 million overspend on disabled facility grants. What's been done to fix budget forecasting in social care capital?
Thank you, Chair. Just boring but important that there isn't an overspend on the disabled facilities grant. The disabled facilities grant supports Doncaster people who aren't instant leisure tenancies. The overspend is in relation to adaptations at St Leisure properties. Because of national rules regarding the disabled facilities grant, it can't be used to support St Leisure tenancies. So it doesn't diminish the question, but it's just a technical distinction. It's not a DFG overspend. In terms of the actual overspend, we're doing some work to rebase the budget. There's no easy choices in terms of pressures on other areas in terms of rebasing that budget. And I think there are three main reasons that the cost pressures have worsened. I think a couple of them we could probably characterise as victims of our own success. So the Council and St Leger have improved the way the accessible housing register works. So a couple of years ago, lots of people would be put on the accessible housing register, told that they were going to move, but the move would not materialise for ages, if at all. In the meantime, we wouldn't be adapting their property. So we've flipped that. So you are now more likely to get quick access to adaptations in your property, bearing in mind you probably didn't want to move in the first place. You're only moving because you were told you had to kind of have those adaptations in place. So that means more pressure on adaptations. The second kind of victim of our own success kind of explanation is we've hugely sped up our occupational therapy access, because occupational therapists often provide the initial assessment about adaptations. And we've also started to speed up our access to adaptations themselves. So there's been an improvement plan overseen by last year's Cabinet, will continue into this year to make sure that that progress continues. So that's, if you like, that's pushing forward demand more quickly that would otherwise have taken longer to come through. So that we need to factor that in terms of the profiling. And then the third reason is just something we probably all know well, just in terms of working with contractors and so on. Just costs have increased in the last few years, various reasons people might give for that, but costs of labour, costs of materials have increased. So in terms of your point about forecasting, in April just gone, we've integrated a number of manual systems that we were previously drawing on. We've integrated those into one electronic system. So we've now got management information for all ongoing and outstanding kind of cases. So, and we're able to forecast on budget for each adaptation. And we've created some performance reports. So basically, once we've rebased our budget, you shouldn't expect any more surprises in forecasting as you're kind of asking about now.
Thank you. We do have a question from Councillor Dave Knight.
Please, if I can now, please, if we can refer, sorry, to paragraph 43. It's reference to the number of people receiving carers assessment has reduced over the last quarter. I understand because of a change in the organisation responsible for this service. And thereon, from April of this year, the responsibility has been with the council to directly provide carers assessments, and work is underway, as I understand, to increase the numbers back to appropriate levels. Can you give an update on how that's going? I know it's only a short since April, but can you give us an update, please?
Yeah, I think that's for me again, Councillor Knight. So, first thing to say is that between 2021 and the end of 2024, we increased the number of carers assessments each year fivefold from 2021 to 2024, because we just recognised we needed to give it much more focus than it previously had. And also between 2023 and the end of 2024, we reduced the average time it took us to complete each care assessment by an average of 25%. So things were starting to build in the right sort of way. In spite of the progress, and I think for good reasons, we decided to change the model for delivery for carers assessments at the end of March this year, when the previous contract expired. So we had a contracted arrangement. It was due to end the end of March. We chose not to extend it because we were basically feeling like it was only going to take us so far. Because ultimately you had a specialist service, a relatively small number of people dealing with carers assessments. And we know the huge number of carers that live in Doncaster. We just thought that service was going to become saturated fairly quickly. So what we wanted was an approach where carers were more people's business than just one specialist team. So what we did was we took the investment in that contract and we funded our own wellbeing service, who were already present alongside Stronger Communities officers in all of our neighbourhoods and already kind of working with carers on a day-to-day basis. We said, have some more investment, increase some of the staffing capacity, so you should be able to see and recognise and support more carers earlier. So what we found, you'd also see, I guess, you see signage in the Civic. We're currently campaigning on Think Carer, because we recognise that a lot of people don't really know their carers. They're just looking after their mum, they're looking after their kind of disabled daughter or their neighbour. They're just doing their duty in their own terms, maybe not always aware that they could get support and advice. So we're trying to campaign so more people understand that they can come forward and get help. So in terms of investing in the council's wellbeing service, I suppose the quarter four, which is what we're here to discuss today, was the last 3 months of the old contract. So you'll tend to get at that point, sadly, when a little bit of some staff thinking, okay, I'll try and get another job somewhere else, I'll try and do something else. So we had a drop off in the contract capacity. In terms of your question about how things are going to go going forward, I'll be brutally honest with you. I think quarter one, when we're here in 3 months, I think that will also be challenging, because we're picking up the transition of a new set of staff, a new set of responsibilities on top of existing ones, getting the extra capacity in place. So I think it will take a quarter or two before we start to get us back to where we need to. But I'm really confident, because when we see the great things that our wellbeing staff do with other groups, I'm really confident we'll be hitting the ground running soon. We've got examples now. So, for example, our wellbeing colleagues picked up a referral from a carer. She happened to mention that her partner was a veteran, the person she was caring for. There's brilliant veteran support within the wellbeing service. The old contracted service would have known nothing about that. So the carer was able to get support for her husband via kind of veteran support alongside her existing support. And we've also got great examples of the way our wellbeing team leaned into Carers Week, which was the week before last, and had contact with 250 carers in that week alone through some of the outreach work they were doing. So we do think next month the next quarter number of carers assessments will continue to be low and might even get lower, but we're confident in our ability to kind of recover the trajectory after that.
As I say, thank you sincerely on that one, Phil. It's a very clear explanation. But also, I point out there as well that the service that's been offered down in the foyer downstairs has been exceptional, which I've taken care and to spend time looking at with. There's so many carers that are unpaid and unassisted, and a little bit of advice sometimes goes a long way towards a bit of confidence and a bit of extra support where they may or may not need it. But again, that service has been there this last week, especially, which I picked up on, which has been proving to me, in my mind, to be something in the right direction. And I do, to a degree, as you all will appreciate, and I appreciate more than as many here that are new to council, that when somebody comes into a new position and picking up from where one organisation closes or is reduced or shuts down, not every member of staff moves over to the new organisation. And again, to start out from a standing start, a zero start, to learn and get to manage and organise yourself or themselves into that new position, it takes time. And I think from April to now, again, I think is a very short space in time, that hopefully by the end of the next quarter, the whole thing will have settled down and people will have a more positive direction in where they're all going. And I do appreciate what you've said today, Phil, and likewise, thank you, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. I think Councillor Kidd has just got a quick question to add on to that.
It makes sense that the wellbeing teams, which are locality based, should be supporting carers. They're also supporting people more with small aids and adaptations, am I right? Has the effect on their waiting lists been monitored? Because I know they sometimes do have waiting lists for people referred to their services.
Yeah, and it's absolutely right that what we have to be careful about with services like the wellbeing team is them becoming all things to all people. So they have definitely been experiencing increased demand, and they're definitely not where they want to be in terms of getting to everybody as quick as they possibly can. Some of the carers' pressure is some of their recruitment from the contracts, the funding for the previous arrangement hasn't been completed yet, so that will give them more people to do the work. But yeah, the other thing to say about carers as well is it really is everybody's responsibility. So for example, my adult social care teams are also responsible for identifying and supporting carers in the context of maybe the cared for person getting good quality support that's mindful of the carer's views. So again, it's not just about putting it all on wellbeing, but once we've got all the investment and the staffing capacity in place and the connections they've got with all the other organisations at grassroots in Doncaster, will be about as good as we could be in terms of supporting carers alongside other people preventatively.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we're going to move on to creating safer, stronger, cleaner, greener communities where everyone belongs. Our question again, it's for Councillor Knight.
Yeah, thank you. And if we can now refer, please, to paragraph 48. Again, service standards. If we can look at maybe the percentage of adult safeguarding concerns, the figure here at 35%. Presently, and concerns in the inquiries and the repeats in a 12-month period. It's the repeats. Could you highlight why at all?
Apologies, you're going to have to hear me droning on again. You'll get a break from me in a minute.
And me.
Adult safeguarding is about protecting adults with care and support needs from abuse or neglect. So when a concern is identified, we work with the affected adult, maybe family members if they're involved in the involved services, just to address what the issues are and deal with any future risks. One thing just to triangulate with, because it's also something that we report on, at the end of every safeguarding episode, we ask the person or their representatives, some people haven't got the mental capacity to meaningfully kind of engage in this sort of question. We ask them, do they feel safer now than they felt at the start? So you'll see in other information we report on, just about 89% say yes. So what we're trying to triangulate is 9 out of 10 people say they feel safer, but yet some people are getting a repeat safeguarding referral within the 12-month period, which is why we report on it, and it's a good kind of subject for a question. So I think there's two dimensions to it. There's the bit that we can do something about and the bit that we can't necessarily do something about. So the bit we can't necessarily do something about is life involves taking risks. So when we work with people and we try to reduce risks, we can't eliminate the risks in their life and we can't eliminate some of the choices they might want to make. If we try to do that, we're kind of getting into kind of draconian, forcing people to do things that they say they don't want to do. So for some people, they will carry on with things that we might say, well, probably rather you didn't do that, but we might be doing them if we were in their position, and it might expose them to further risk. And if it does happen, then we'll have to investigate. So some of it's about recognizing there's a natural level of repeat referrals that might come in because of the way people are living, the things that they're doing. We try to provide information, advice and support, but sometimes people just do what they want to do, which as I say, I might do in their place. The things we can do something about, though, are sometimes when we might spot repeat themes and we think, why was that not sustainably addressed? Why did that come up again when something very similar happened a few months before? So a good example of that might be for someone who's in a care home setting. One example from the last quarter was someone who had 2 falls in a period of time where the people do fall in care homes like they fall everywhere. You can't stop people falling. But the nature of the reasons why they fell first and the things that could have been put in place to help address that person's situation, it didn't feel like the lessons had been learned the second time around. So we had a repeat that felt like it was avoidable. So in that situation, we work with that. If it's happened in a care setting, we will work with that care setting to make sure it doesn't happen again. And a lot of these arrangements are contracted arrangements, so we'll connect with our quality assurance and our contract monitoring. So there are some things that happen that are repeats that you'd say, well, do something about that, that's a failing. And there are other things that happen that are natural, maybe the way we live our lives. And I guess what we do quarter by quarter is spot particular themes or issues that we need to kind of look into a bit more and just make sure that we're not surging for any particular reasons that we could be addressing.
I say thank you for being very clear on that one again. And there's maybe something that I'd overlooked in the fact that during the period of time, over a year or whatever, people's health may or may not deteriorate, and subsequently what might have been an issue a year ago or wasn't there a year ago, maybe there now, so the referral again would come back, obviously. So in that respect, I can see again with your explanation how much a year can make a hell of a difference in a lifestyle when somebody is in more senior years. No, thank you on that, Phil.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Can I move on now? Councillor John Reid has a question.
Thanks, Chair. Dan and Phil again, possibly. Paragraph 48, service standards. The recycling rate for household domestic waste, we had a nice dip and then went back up again to where it was. Could you please explain and anything being done to address this, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So if I give a little bit of background, and it's important to note that the figure in the table at 41.4% is actually at Q3. The actual figure at Q4, because the data is collected in arrears, is at 48.7. So that's 1.3% off target, but still off target. Compares reasonably well with our neighbours, but those comparisons are quite useful, but obviously areas are different in terms of demographics and geographics, which does impact on waste and it does impact on people's behaviour towards waste. Just in terms of what we've done, a couple of things. Our bins, so the black bins, the blue bins, the green bins, are collected by a private company called Suez. That's been a long-standing contract, and they perform reasonably well in that. And that's another indicator in terms of the number of bins that are collected. We've recently extended that contract for a period of 2 years, running from 26 to 28, and then we'll have to look at what the future option is in terms of waste management, but that's a future discussion to have. What we did when we renewed that contract is we were able to address a bit of a long-standing problem that we had with some of the blue bin collections, in that people were innocently putting the wrong things in. Some people don't always innocently put the wrong things in the wrong bin, but actually if somebody's doing it innocently because they think a margarine tub can go in that blue bin, we needed to address that. So that's one thing now that we've helped to address, in that pots, tubs and trays can now go in the blue bins, which should lead to less issues of contamination. Another thing that we've also done, we still retain 6 household waste recycling centres, which is quite a good spread in comparison to our neighbours for the borough, and that's a partnership that we had initially prior to the most recent contract with Barnsley and Rotherham, but more recently it's with just Barnsley, and that's delivered for us by Martins, who cover the 6 sites. The other point that we've done is a big piece about education and making it simple to access details on our website, and also making sure that people are aware if there is a contamination issue, why that is and what they need to do differently. What I would end on is the world of waste is complicated, and it's probably fair to say changing. You might have read or heard in the press about extended producer regulations. That basically means that people that make waste, packaging and various other bits that we all end up with in our bins or in the waste stream, are now having to pay for that. That money is given to us, but that doesn't mean that it's just given to us to use the money how we wish. What it is going to mean is that if we aren't recycling as much as government think we should do, and we are putting waste to be incinerated, there'll be a penalty for that. So we've really got to look at how we're going to manage waste going forward. That lines quite well with the contract that we've got with Suez, which is coming up in 26 and 28. And I think what we have proposed is to bring a briefing to start a dialogue with the relevant scrutiny committee about the changes to waste that are coming forward. So I hope that gives some way to answer the question, Chair, but an awful lot of this is about people's behaviour in relation to waste. I think going forward it's a big education piece, but also the reality is making it as simple and as easy as possible for people to put the right waste into the right bin or take it to the right place for disposal.
Thank you. I think there's some kind of seasonal adjustment going to be built in as well, is that correct?
Yeah, so what happens is when we end green waste, obviously that affects recycling rates because you're not taking in the green waste, which is obviously part of that calculation. And also, interestingly, Q3, which dips down to 41.4, takes into account Christmas as well when you get more waste. The reality is, sadly, if people put stuff that could be recycled into a black bin, that affects the recycling rate. But I accept, you know, human nature is such that on occasions people want to make the most simplest way to get rid of waste and not necessarily always the best way. And I think it's our job to make sure that people are educated and understand the need to put the waste in the right bin or take it to the right place so that it's disposed of correctly.
Thank you. Informative. Thanks.
Sorry, Dan, can I just ask about that? So when a bin is contaminated, do we sort of get rid of it, or is there a warning, have they got to do it themselves? I'm not sure on that.
So one of the problems when it's contaminated is that in effect it gets taken and it can't be processed at the place that it's been taken to because it's contaminated. So that then means that there's costs then to take it somewhere else or to segregate it. And the contract works in such a way, as you'd expect it to for a commercial entity, to have provision in there that we end up having to pay them if there are elements of increased contamination, because that's more costs for them. So what we will do is we will put warning notices on for people, and what we'd anticipate is that would change or modify the behaviour. But going back to the point about pots, tubs and trays, I think that led to a contamination issue, but I think it was more innocent than deliberate because people were thinking, oh, blue bin, you know, can put something in there that's recyclable, I could put a margarine tub in. But yeah, if it's contaminated, we won't collect, and if we do collect and it's contaminated, it has a penalty for us financially.
Thank you. Oh, I think we might have a quick question from Antoinette.
It was just around, I don't know if it's in the report, I can't remember now, about fly tipping. Is that reduced over time, or is it becoming worse because of, I mean, you're saying there's places to recycle and places to take things, but people sometimes are a bit lazy, aren't they?
I think fly tipping overall, I don't have the percentages in terms of has fly tipping reduced, but what I can tell you is our ability to deal with fly tipping is much better than it was. When I started 4 years ago, we had about a 3,500 backlog of reports of fly tipping that we have a service standard for that we should collect within 7 days. Now that's a bit of a false service standard in some respects because we can't collect all fly tipping within 7 days because it could be asbestos, it could be gas canisters, it could be hard to get to, could actually be on private land. So there's a range of things that come in there, but on the stuff that we can collect, we are generally 98, 99% now. Now, what that indicates is that at the time, I think we needed to take a step back and think about our approach to dealing with fly tipping, the level of resources that we put in to match that being commensurate with the problem. I think it's fair to say we've had some success as well on fly tipping, particularly in relation to enforcement and vehicle disposals where we've seized a vehicle and that's been destroyed. But the uniqueness of the borough does lend itself to us having a bit of a challenge with fly tipping because it's quite rural and it's quite big and there are deprived areas. And I think what we really need to look at is the occasional fly tippers, but actually those that make a bit of a living out of it. And you do have responsibilities as an individual to make sure that if somebody says, well, I'll take that rubbish for you, that you've done that legitimately. But actually, going back to people's behaviour, most people just want rid of it. And actually, if it's somebody illegitimate, then their problem is solved, but actually our problem is created by somebody who may or may not be linked to wider criminal activity. That's a reality on some of the fly tipping. But overall, fly tipping performance good, and I'm hoping that the overall trend in terms of fly tipping presentations is on a decline.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move now on to nurturing a child and family-friendly borough. I think it's Antoinette.
A quick question around the external placements for children, and for all the best of reasons we're trying to bring them in-house, and yet the figures has increased. So I just wonder if there's further explanation around that, please.
Yes, I'm happy to respond to this one. So our current looked after children population is 503 children. So just to kind of put that 41 into perspective, it is absolutely higher than we would like it to be. It does reflect when we say external that those are not in-house providers. Those children may still be placed in Doncaster, and about 8 of that 41 are actually local within the borough and then local within the South Yorkshire region. One of our biggest challenges is placement sufficiency, and particularly as children's needs change and they grow. We did do really well in achieving some targets in relation to reducing our number of external. When I first came here 2.5 years ago, we were at 58. We've worked tenaciously to try and get the right care in the right place for children. But what we've seen over the last 2 quarters is a challenge. So what we've seen particularly is some of our children placed in independent foster care arrangements, hitting that age of 10, 11 and actually really disrupting, and then we cannot find another foster placement for them. So nationally it's estimated that about 8,000 more foster placements are needed. We currently have 132 fostering families registered. They provide care for about 203 of our children. There's another 200 children that are looked after by IFAs, independent fostering agencies. So we're really trying to create an economy of home for young people at different ages and stages in their life. We do have 19 in-house residential placements. We've got 2 more 2-beds that we're really excited to bring on board. We've been talking about it for a while. We've achieved recruitment really positively over the last 6 months, and we're hoping to open those 2 homes officially in October. We're also looking at a bit of an emergency provision that we're seeking to open to try and offer a break for parents so that some of our teenage young people don't come into our care more permanently. And we're also investing in some multi-systemic therapy support, our Families Together team, expanding those teams that work with our children that are on the edge of care, but also sometimes those children that could go home if we create that safety and understanding at home. So we are really trying to work hard on all those factors about the children we currently care for. And we're then really ambitious about the children that we want to help prevent coming to care. So can we support family to care better? Can we create the right environment, the right support? But also can we support families to feel better enabled to sometimes change what's happening in their lives to be able to keep their children safer. So that's our mission, support reducing the numbers coming in, help really understand that we only look after children when we need to. I just think my final comment as well is we don't see residential care as a destination here in Doncaster. We see it as a really powerful intervention. So what we're always doing is trying to support those young people to say, could they return to foster care? Could they come into our in-house provision? Could they have a positive journey into more semi-independent accommodation? So we have had 4 young people come into external, but we've had 4 young people leave. We've also placed 3 young people in our in-house. We've got 2 more young people that are moving on their journey, so that will create some more momentum. And we're also investing in our own semi-independent living and working really closely with the best providers to commission that care when we do go external. As you can imagine, we're quite tenacious. We want to make sure we get not only value for money, but that our kids get the best care. So yes, we want it to reduce, and we're ambitious in our target.
Thank you, that's quite a positive answer.
Thank you. Right, well, we haven't got any other questions for the next 2 areas. Has anybody got a question they'd like to ask? Oh, I think we've got Councillor Cox at the front.
Thank you. I've got 2. One's, you see, I think it's Faye. Arthur Street Developments, 700k winding up. Why? And do we own the assets? Have the assets gone? Or what's happened?
It's probably a joint, because I think Dan's involved as well from it's in terms of the assets and what's happening in terms of that. So a decision hasn't been taken, but it's a provision. But Dan will probably be able to tell more in terms of the Arthur Street company.
Well, in terms of the sale? Yeah, Yeah, in terms, so that, again, it might appear a bit of a stock answer, but there is commercially sensitive dialogue ongoing, and hopefully that will be resolved within due course. You can appreciate that's it, but I'm not wishing to mask anything. But obviously, yeah, if there's a dialogue ongoing and that relates to commercial terms and conditions, then that's something that I'm not able publicly to give any more detail of.
Where can the potential sale of the assets be seen?
In terms of, well, I think it's probably useful for us to have that conversation separately, but the reality is, my understanding is that has progressed, but it's at that stage of finalising the deal.
Thank you. And the other one is for you, Dan, and it's about hospital parking and in there where it's a saving. When will the new hospital that was Lister Court that were demolished, when will that parking scheme be seen?
That's not a scheme that I know in detail, so I think it's probably best if I take a question back and bring that to you, yeah, as an answer directly.
Thank you. Has anybody else got any more questions? If not, then we'll move on to recommendations. So the committee was asked to give consideration to the information presented to it today. Does the committee note the contents presented? Yeah. Thank you. Right. So now we're going to move on to item 7, which is the St Leisure Homes of Doncaster Limited Performance and Delivery Update Quarter for 2024-2025, pages 105 to 126. Chris, could you possibly do an overview for us, please?
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. As you're aware, there are 40 KPIs set by the council for St Leger Homes. Within this report, it gives you some detail as to where we've achieved and on those targets and where there is still some work that we need to undertake. I think to draw your attention to the negatives in the first instance, specifically around voids. It's been a really challenging environment for us on voids, as you are aware. In addition to that, we've made the decision as an authority that we want to acquire as many properties as we can. Those acquisitions also go through the voids team, so that puts additional pressure. There is no additional resource other than contractor support that's been offered, hence the reason why that target is not green yet. Having said that, as a reference point, we score favourably when we compare ourselves against the sector, and as you can see within the report, that is still quartile 1 performance for any organisation on voids. Nevertheless, there's still some work to do there. In terms of repairs, again, you can see following COVID, we came out of the back of COVID with a backlog of around 7,500 repairs. Really pleasing to be able to report that they're now gone. We've completed those. Not only that, we undertook a review of our repair service, and not to give too much detail here today, but I'm more than happy to give further detail on this at another time. We combine the scheduled and the responsive repair service together. That is quite unique, and as an organisation, that puts us in a very strong position. However, there is still more work that we need to do on the repair service. So what does that mean? Well, when a tenant rings up to report a repair, they get an appointment date. It might not be the one that they want at this moment in time, and we recognise there's still work to do in that space. However, they have got a dedicated appointment date. And from a regulatory perspective, that's what the regulator wants to see. So other organisations may decide to batch work, and that would be released at a time where there's budget made available. But in essence, what they are doing is they're leaving the tenant with no appointment date. That's basically how that works. So we feel as though that's a preference for us. You'll also note that complaints is also under pressure, but again, you will be able to see that the performance in dealing with complaints, all of those are within the tolerance or meeting the target. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a run at it, but more than happy to answer any questions that anybody's got.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, and I think then we will move on to questions. I think it will be Councillor Kidd first with her question.
It's about repairs. Can you explain about the different targets for non-emergency repairs? We talk about 2 months. Was it 2 months and 2 months wait as a target? But I don't want to bring my casework to you, but I have been speaking to a gentleman who was given 3 times for 3 different repairs, all of which were in excess of about 3 months.
Yeah, absolutely. So the non-emergency repairs targets does encompass the old scheduled repairs. So you are finding that it's possibly plastering that you're referring to, or bricklaying. So for standard repairs, we should be adhering to those within 20 days. We are outside of that target to some degree because of the demand that we see on the service. More often than not, we are achieving that target, and you can see in the current performance it is improving. However, we recognise we've got more to do in that.
Okay, one of them was actually the flashing on the chimney, and
roofing.
somebody turned up without any ladders and had to come back again.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question, which that was with myself. How efficient is the organisation in managing operative travel time? What is the average time travelling between jobs, and how does this compare to productive time spent on scheduled tasks? And is travel time being minimised to maximise service delivery?
Yes, it is. So we have a system called DRS. That's our scheduling system. Similar system to what's used by the ambulance service and other organisations. And what it's able to do through the technology and the tracker that's in each vehicle is it determines a number of things: how quickly the operative is going to complete the task that they're currently working on, and where the next available appointment is. And it does that in much quicker time than a human being can do. So it is literally scheduling the next job before they've completed it. Unfortunately for us, the way that appointments are made, it might not be within a few hundred yards. It could be a mile, it could be within the next village. That's just the nature of repairs. In addition to that, certainly from an emergency perspective, maybe there's a priority repair coming that determines that they have to travel some distance for that. And again, that's taken into consideration through DRS. We've recently updated that software and we've done a health check. So that health check's been done by the organisation that provides the software, and they've recommended some improvements. And we're just in the middle of putting those improvements in. And I can report that we're already seeing refined times in terms of travel. But we are always going to be in a position where, just due to the nature of the amount of repairs that we do, so we do around 75,000 repairs a year, we are always going to have operatives crossing. But the purpose of the scheduling system is wherever their start point is their end point, and the software knows ultimately where they want to end their day, which is as near to home as possible. So yeah, it's really efficient, but we are monitoring that on a daily basis and working with the provider.
Thank you, that's really good to know. Right, the next question, I think it's Councillor Jackson.
Yeah. Good afternoon. No, it's not. It's morning. Sorry.
Yeah, still morning.
Sorry. Yeah. Item 7.2. You actually related to this, to the void rent loss, and it would appear to be going in the wrong direction. My question to that is why. There are multiple questions here. You again referred to the acquisition of new properties. Can you explain what the criteria level of repairs are required for acquisition? Because naturally it can be high investment if you take on a very poor property. Mm-hmm. St George's Court on Thorn Road, is it HMO or flats? And what is meant by the term non-lettable voids? Mm-hmm. Just seems nonsensical, that. And are previous tenants recharged for the necessary repairs beyond acceptable wear and tear? I'll leave them with ready.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to try and remember all those questions.
I can refresh you if you want.
Yeah, can we start
Chris?
with the first one then, if that's all right?
Yeah.
And I'll go through them. Yeah, sorry, do you just want to repeat?
Yeah, sorry, the void rent loss going in the wrong direction. So
Yeah.
evidently recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are currently doing a key-to-key review of the voids process. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there. That review really determines that we are looking at how we receive the keys from an outgoing tenant, and then the works profile, how that's executed as we complete that works. I think the one thing to mention is the void service is demand-led. So it's the amount of keys that we physically get through the door and the condition of the properties that we receive. And I think some of the challenges that we've had, certainly in the last 2 years, is the condition of some of the properties that have come back have been really, really challenging. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is we're a good distance away from decent homes, so 15 years, 20 years in some instances. So some of those components are failing, and we're having to do much broader pieces of work to get the void properties up to the standard where they need to be. That's taking time, and the frequency of voids coming through fluctuates, not in line with expected numbers. So I think I've already mentioned the acquisitions. Clearly, the number of acquisitions that we undertook last year, that was over 100. That was in addition to the normal number of voids that we get through. Again, utilising the same amount of staff to do more is clearly what we want. We want to create that efficiency, but there's only so much they can do before actually we are saturated. As you mentioned, you can see there the target is in red. That is an incredibly ambitious target for us that we're trying to drive towards. It is quartile 1 performance in the sector, quite unheard of to be able to turn voids around at that pace, but we are continuing to drive towards achieving that target.
Sorry, excuse me, Chris. Well, in response to that, are previous tenants actually recharged for damage to the property?
Yes, they are. So, and certainly more recently, over the last 6 months, we've put a lot of effort and resource into this. I think the difficulty is, and we have to be really fair about this, what's fair wear and tear and what is actual tenant damage. But the level of recharges that we have been raising, certainly over this last 6 months, has increased significantly. So you can be assured of that, Council.
Is it possible to give some indication of what the recharge level is?
As a total figure or per property? Yeah, either of those we will be able to provide, but not today. Yeah, no problem. And I think the other question were around St George's Court. So, as you're aware, St George's Court, I think we've got mixed opinions on this. I think it's a lovely building, certainly Block 1. That's the old coal board headquarters. You'll be pleased to hear that it will be retained as flats. And we've got a investment programme planned in for that, which has already started. That includes renewing the roof on Block 1, the old coal board building, and then a significant improvement programme, which includes building safety and fire safety, as well as aesthetics and internal improvements.
And the number of flats that will be included within the property?
We are retaining the same archetype, so we're not changing the internal layouts of the flats at all. And that creates both benefits and disadvantages. Some of those flats are really quite large inside and fairly grand. However, we will make sure that there's appropriate lettings on that. So the same number of flats, there's no change.
What about Block 2, Chris?
Yeah, Block 2's getting the same. Yeah, so it's getting a full refurbishment. And again, that's already commenced.
There's a lot of damp in there, isn't there?
There is. So we've got some subterranean water, unfortunately, in the cellar But through investigation, I think we know that that's probably coming from collapsed drains more than anything else. The actual substructure itself is quite dry. It's just in specific areas. So I think it'll be collapsed drains, in fairness, Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Can I just remind everybody, just any questions to come through the chair that's not on there? Thank you. Are you still with that one? Sorry, thank you.
Just one other item. What is meant by the term non-lettable voids?
Yeah, so these are voids, and Princess Crescent would be a really good example of this, where we've got planned improvements. So anything that's going to have investment, which obviously it wouldn't be sensible for us to put a tenant in there if we're planning on doing major improvements. So at this moment in time, we've got 7, that's today's figure, 4 on Princess Crescent, Branton Bungalows is one of those, or Branton Bungalow. So yeah, this 7 in total. So it's where we can't let the property because we're undertaking improvements.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. The next question is actually Councillor Jackson again.
Sorry, you stuck with me, Chris.
No, you're all right, don't worry. Good questions.
Right, item 7.21, and you have alluded to this, the decent home standards, and I'm sure you're well aware that this was introduced by the government in the year 2000. The minimum standard was to ensure safe, warm and in reasonable state of repair. Updated in 2006 to include the Housing Act 2004 and the Housing Health and Safety Rating System. The initial target set by the government was 2010. We are now 25 years on, which is, quarter of a century, and yet we still have 1,101 non-decent homes. Why is this?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Councillor Jackson. So they're not the original decent homes. So just to give us some background on this, when the regulator introduced the consumer standards, part of that was to encourage organisations to increase the level of stock condition surveys that they were undertaking. And this council and St Ledger have responded to that with significant investment. We're undertaking around 4,000 to 5,000 stock condition surveys a year. Unfortunately, as part of a stock condition survey, you do get category 1 hazards identified. And just so we're all absolutely clear what that could be, it could be a tripping hazard, or it could be something as simple as a cracked socket. So not dangerous, but classed as a Cat 1 hazard. If you have a Cat 1 hazard in a property, that property is immediately classified as non-decent. So as you can appreciate, that number is going to fluctuate, but I can offer you assurance that it's not due to the fact that that decency work wasn't undertaken. It's a result of our very ambitious stock condition programme that we're undertaking. In addition to that, we identify through the surveys that we undertake and the repairs that we undertake, sometimes faulty roofs, or where properties need new windows or significant investment. And again, they're not planned in for that particular financial year. They'll be planned in for future financial years. But appropriately, we would classify those at non-decent at survey stage. So there's around 300 properties that are non-decent through having investment work undertaken, planned investment work undertaken, and the rest are through Cat 1s. You will see in subsequent reports that figure will be quite volatile. As I've explained, if it's a Cat 1 electrical repair, we attend to that same day. So that figure's already out of date. We will have already completed some of those Cat 1s and then taken them away from non-decency.
Thank you. Next question, I think also Councillor Jackson there.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this, Chris.
No, it's all right. It's fine.
You'll get to know me. Item 6.4, which is the KPIs. You report that there are 41, of which 10 are annually reported on. Out of the 31 KPIs that you report, 45% of those are moving in the wrong direction. That's a high percentage. Why?
Yeah, so there are some moving in the wrong direction that are still green or still within tolerance. I think there's 12 that are red that need attention. I think we've mentioned voids, so that's 2. We've also mentioned the standard repairs. There's 2 there. I think complaints for us has been really challenging, but just to bring to everybody's attention. So the Ombudsman requires all organisations to make complaints as easy as possible for anybody that wants to complain, or where they're demonstrating dissatisfaction also needs to be dealt with as a complaint. So we've done just that. We've made it really, really easy for any of our tenants to complain, and as a result of that, the number of complaints that we've received has gone up, and that makes sense. However, we should determine that as a learning opportunity, not necessarily as somebody complaining for any other reason. And we look at the themes, we undertake the analysis to determine whether or not we need to shape the services accordingly. So I think that gives an answer to the majority of the reds. I think the rest of the answer is we're functioning in a really challenging environment. Demand for service is incredibly high, and I think certainly from a societal perspective, the demand for service immediately is also incredibly high. That's not to say we shouldn't set challenging targets. We definitely should, but I would urge councillors to look at the sector and quartile figures also when thinking around whether or not we are performing well or not. I think that's a fair point to make.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Next question. Councillor Jackson, you may have a question.
They've been all good questions, Councillor, don't worry.
7.23, KPI 23, energy efficiency. Well, I'm sure you can hear me from but yeah, 7.23, KPI 23, energy efficiency. Some stock too expensive to make energy proficient. What is the proposed solution to this then? Demolition?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think you're right. It's cost prohibitive in some scenarios, and I think a really good example of that would be non-traditional stock. So as an authority, we have a significant number of non-trad stock, which is notoriously difficult to treat when it comes to energy efficiency. I think one thing for us, our strategy so far has been thermal comfort, so wrapping properties rather than deploying technology, and I think that's served us in good stead. I think moving forward, and we are rapidly reaching this point, we are going to have to make a decision what technology we do want to deploy. At this moment in time, I think we're all clear that as an authority, installing air source heat pumps and solar would be just a colossal expense. And with no grant funding available for that, we'd be somewhere between the kind of 400 million mark and 500 million, which is just completely unaffordable. So I think the challenge for all authorities and for all housing associations and providers is finding the kind of bang for the buck in reality. How much money do you want to spend on thermal efficiency on a property that actually provides a benefit to a tenant? And at this moment in time, any solutions that we'd want to put forward would be in consultation with our tenants, the council, to make sure that that was actually good value for money. So we've got about 2 years left on our programme. We're still doing solid walls, so we're still doing the external wall insulation on the solid wall properties. And I think then we're quickly going to reach a point where we are going to have to engage the sector and the market to really understand what that decision is. And that decision would be whether or not to do another round of gas boilers, or whether or not we're going to take gas out of our domestic properties and replace that with a more efficient system. But we all need to have our eye on the fact that at this moment in time, that would create cost pressures for our tenants. Their bills would go higher than lower. But what I'm also confident in, this sector's fantastic at finding solutions. I read an article this morning about new air source heat pumps that are way more efficient than the last generation, and the sector's fantastic at responding to this. It's not going to be long before those air source heat pumps are way more efficient than a gas boiler. The costs associated with that will come down as manufacturing really kicks in, and I think that's our time to change the strategy, change the training programs for our gas fitters so they can install air source heat pumps and start installing. So you're right, at this moment in time, that would be cost prohibitive for some properties, but there's always a solution. I don't think it's necessarily wholesale demolition and clearance, but maybe that may be appropriate for some of our estates.
Can I interject, Chair? Can you give us an example then of the non-traditional properties that St Ledger Homes still manages?
Yeah, so Ella's Lane, that would be a really good example. So a non-traditional property, a Swedish timber property, so timber framed. Unfortunately, they're also listed buildings, which creates even more properties, even more problems. We've got steel framed properties, we've got poured concrete, we've got pretty much all of them. Yeah, we've got Howards, yeah, we've also got BISFs. Yeah, to some degree. Yeah, to some degree, but to get them to meet EPC or under.
Is it possible then for the next meeting is to give us a breakdown of what non-traditional properties there are?
Yeah, if that's appropriate for scrutiny, I can definitely do that, but there's other forums where we could do that.
Know, they're high cost for maintenance.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Jackson, it might be something that you might want to look at in your region and housing panel, yeah, at some point. Thank you. Right, okay, so that's the questions. We're going to go on to recommendations. So that'll be paragraph 3, page 105. The committee is asked to note the progress of St Ledger Homes Doncaster performance and contribution the company makes to supporting the City of Doncaster Council's strategic priorities. Is this information noted?
Noted, Chair.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item 8 on the agenda, the overview and scrutiny work plan 2024 to 25 and Council's forward plan. I'm going to hand over to Christine Rothwell, the Senior Governance Officer. She'll provide an overview.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the work plan has been worked up over the last few weeks with the chairs of the appropriate committees. And the work plan that we've developed so far is set out in front of you. There's just a little bit of additional work that needs to be undertaken for the Communities and Environment Scrutiny Panel, and that will be undertaken in the next couple of weeks. Also set out for your information is the Council's forward plan of key decisions. That's there for all members to note and go through if you wish to. And also included within the report is the Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee's terms of reference for noting, and that is the committee that is undertaken across South Yorkshire and undertaken through Sheffield City Council. That's all there is, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. So the recommendations, paragraph 3, page 127. Following the work planning meetings, the report is asking the committee to approve the scrutiny work plan, consider and note the forward plan of key decisions, note the term of reference of the South Yorkshire Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Is this agreed?
Can I just make a comment, Chair? Thank you. I've not got the work plan in front of me, so I do apologise if there's something in there. But we touched on the Shared Prosperity Fund and the amount of money that's coming in and the work with employers, and it's really important that it works. I'm just wondering if it's something we ought to consider feeding into the work plan with maybe the relevant scrutiny panel.
Yeah, thank you. Christine's noted that. Thank you. Okay, so thank you all for attending. If all agreed, I will now close the meeting.